A penny in hand today is better than two promised tomorrow. It's not just an old parable that Warren Buffett repeats, it's how he sees life. Amidst the collective frenzy, he watched silently as if witnessing a crowd rushing off a cliff, believing there was gold there. The question he left for posterity was very simple. Do people have the patience to see the truth when the crowd only wants to hear what is pleasant? Alice Schroeder's Snow Globe is the only book BFE has allowed to be written about her entire life. This is not a dry account of deals and numbers, but a raw journey from a childhood obsessed with money to a career on Go Street and then back to a modest home in Omaha. It reveals the dark side, the timidity, the stage fright, the complicated choices in marriage, and at the same time, it also exposes the origins of a seemingly cold investment method that carries within it a profound philosophy about humanity and time. Reading this book, one realizes that the snow globe is not just a metaphor for money, it is a way of being. A small snowflake, if cold enough, sticky enough, and persistent enough to roll over the years, will become a giant ball. Buffett has been rolling that ball all his life, without speed, without acclaim, just persistence and not deviating. The question is for every listener today. In a fast-paced world where success is measured by speed and show, does anyone still dare to live by the slow law of the snowball? Is there anyone brave enough to choose an internal measure for themselves instead of chasing after external applause? And if so, where does your snowball go? This is more than just an invitation to explore the life of one of the world's greatest investors. This is a reminder that each of us is holding our own first snowflake. It's not about the initial size, it's about the faith and discipline to keep it growing. Tobo doesn't promise a get-rich-quick formula, but it does show the power of patience and the truth that the greatest things often start from the very small, very ordinary. Before going into the book review, we encourage listeners to buy and read it to fully experience the book's content. Because only when you read this book will you understand the issues I am talking about. Please buy the book and support the author. Now let's start reviewing this book with me. I sat back in my old wooden chair in my small office in Omaha. Long legs crossed behind the rustic table that once belonged to my father, an expensive vestseega draped over his shoulders. But it was wrinkled, like a suit bought in a hurry from a store. I still keep the habit of dressing like that. Regardless of the 15 Barrere employees around him in casual clothes, the white shirt was always slightly open at the collar. The tie is off-kilter like I forgot my collar size 40 years ago. On the face messy hair falls over the ears, bushy eyebrows protrude, sometimes doubtful, sometimes mischievous. To others, he looks like a 72-year-old man with pale blue eyes, but behind that gaze, I know I am holding a world full of calculations and memories. The four walls around me are hung with memorabilia. Delegee diploma in public speaking. A small book from a TV roll. Baseball glove in glass case and countless memories with Coca-Cola. The classic glass pearl sits proudly on the reception desk. Outside the window it was a bright Omaha morning, but I had the blinds drawn tight. The lighting and scenery were less important than the news crawling across the CNBC screen that was playing silently in front of me. News is a never-ending stream, and sometimes I myself am the content that appears in it. People often see me through public images as a rich old man addicted to coke. The one who always talks about money with simple examples. But very few people really know me. I don't write books about myself. Instead, I let others do it. I used to say, if there are multiple versions, choose the less flashy one. Because the truth often lies in the ugly. I still remember clearly. In Sun Valley in 1999, I decided to do something I hadn't done in 30 years. Market forecast. That event became a turning point in my life. Just like in the book you are holding. From the moment I stepped off the shiny Gustav IV, dragging my self-carried suitcase. No one would have thought that he was one of the richest people in the world. I drove myself to the airport, carried my own luggage, and when I got on the plane, all I needed was a window seat, a jerry launcher, a basket of chips, and a stack of newspapers strewn about. My children and grandchildren happily talked and laughed. I read the newspaper quietly, head bowed, as if I were sitting alone in my living room in Omaha, Sun Valley, where the most powerful faces in Hollywood, media, technology, and politics converge. It was called the Elephant Feast, where the attendees felt great just by standing next to giants. Reporters crowded outside. Inside is a world shielded by security, shiny SUVs, and lavish parties among the crowds. I am still me. Red sweater with Nebraska printed on it. A simple smile and a composure that allowed him to read the newspaper throughout the shaky flight without even looking up at the mountain scenery outside. I had been preparing for weeks for my speech in Sun Valley when I stepped up to the podium. I started telling the Jones story from 1964 to 1981. 17 years. The economy grew fivefold, Fortune 500 sales also increased fivefold, but the stock market remained stagnant. I talk about two fundamental questions in investing. How much will you get and when? I repeat, but this time put you through the lens of interest rates. Sometimes a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. But not always. Interest is the gravitational force that governs all financial assets. I bring history as witness. Of the 2,000 auto companies of the last century, only 3 survive. The whole hall burst into laughter. But I know those examples go straight to the heart of those who are complacent about internet stocks. I point out that there is no new era. The market ultimately reflects only the real value of the economy. And when the market moves too far ahead of the economy, either profits will fall or the bubble will burst. I end with a picture from an old book. There are things that cannot be explained to the unexperienced, either in words or pictures. And I know many people sitting there will soon have to experience that in their own pocket. The audience stood up and applauded, but behind the polite smiles, I detected an undercurrent of suspicion. The young people of Silicon Valley think I'm just an old guy who missed the tech boat. They hear but they do not believe. I left the stage feeling like I had just planted a seed. Will the seed germinate? I'm used to letting time tell. I still clearly remember that sunny afternoon in Sun Valley. One by one, the white jets landed on the tiny airstrip of the town of Hawaii. They were parked in long rows like luxury items in a glass case. Reflecting the Idaho mountain sunshine, each Gustim, Leggett or Changer carries the most powerful tycoons of Hollywood, media and technology. It is the stage where those with billions of dollars gather, wearing the nonchalance of those accustomed to being admired. In that scene, I appeared so different. I stepped off the rental car from Allen & Co., wearing a red sweater, carrying a gift bag with a few polo shirts and a few hardcover notebooks. People often say, a person with tens of billions of dollars must be indifferent to small gifts. But I am extremely happy to have an extra free golf shirt with me. The joy lies in the simple things, not in the ostentatious value. Sun Valley is not just a resort, it is a power fair. A collision of elephants, as my friend used to say. People are invited here not only for money but also for position. And the greatest pleasure of people in that circle is to notice who is crossed off the list this year, who is eliminated from the game. In the leisurely afternoons, people will whisper around the banquet table to find the missing face. With me, the most attractive thing is not the lavish parties or the entertainment like horse riding, boating, shooting. I do not like outdoor games. I like to stay in the apartment overlooking the golf course, read the newspaper, chat with friends like Bill Gates, Kell or Graham. And most importantly, it was a rare time when my entire family could gather and fly in from San Francisco. Sons and daughters came from all over. Even though our marriage had taken an unusual turn, family was still the anchor that made me feel secure in this lavish world. In the evening, When Suji sang old love songs by the flickering torchlight, many people stopped to listen to her voice, not just music but also a reminder of a part of life that no number could describe. As everyone soaked in champagne and music, I knew I had another mission. I had been asked to speak to the entire conference on Saturday morning. I had been preparing for this moment for weeks. In my head, the numbers were ready, the examples lined up. I knew I wouldn't say anything easy. I would talk about bubbles, about greed, about how the market could crush those who believed that history had only one direction. That morning, when I walked into the hall, I put on my familiar red sweater under the bright lights. Before hundreds of expectant eyes, I started with the don'ts from 1964 to 1981, which had remained virtually unchanged. While the economy grew enormously, I asked, where did the profits go? The answer lay in interest rates. I explained, interest rates are like gravity in the financial universe. It pulls everything back down to earth. When interest rates are low, stocks get pushed sky high, but that gravitational pull never goes away. It's just waiting for the right moment to pull it all down. Then I turned back to history. I came up with a list that was 70 pages long. A list of 2,000 car manufacturers in the US shows only 3 survivors. An entire industry changed the world, but most investors lost everything. I continue about aviation. 200 companies were born, and after decades the total is still a loss. I laughed and said, I wish I was there at Kitty Hack back then. I would have shot overdrive and saved the investors a huge amount of money. The hall chuckled, but it was a forced laugh. My message is clear. Technological innovation may change humanity, but that doesn't mean those who invest in technology will inevitably get rich. In every new industry, it is easy to get carried away, easy to get hyped, easy to forget that history has repeatedly shown the outcome is often brutal. I tell the story of the oilmen who went to heaven. Locked in a cage full of colleagues, just shout there is oil in hell, everyone will rush down, no one can resist. I stopped and looked around the hall to make sure they recognized me as investors jumping on the rumor. Regardless of reason, I am not talking about AI, the internet, or the new buzzwords that are shaking up the world. I just want to remind you that every bubble, no matter how technologically clad, must eventually face the gravity of reality. The atmosphere in the hall was heavy as they sat there listening. But I saw a flash of discomfort in many people's eyes. I know what they think. This old man doesn't understand anything about the new era. He missed the train and is now under repair. But I don't intend to please them. I'm just stating a fact. Stocks, in the long run, cannot grow faster than the economy. And if one expects 20% return per year, then it is an illusion. When I finished, I looked at the crowd and remembered my principle: when praising someone, call them by name. Criticize, then criticize duplicate. I am not naming anyone. I just let them figure out for themselves whether they are among them or not. And then the unexpected happened. The whole hall stood up and applauded. I smiled and shrugged, but inside I knew that my appreciation masked other murmurs. Behind the applause there was an undercurrent of protest. They see me as a laggard, someone who refuses to accept the fact that the world has changed. I left the podium with mixed feelings. I knew I had just planted a seed, but I also knew that the seed would have to face the barren soil of greed and arrogance. As I stepped down from the podium, applause echoed behind me, handshakes, and polite compliments. Great. Warren, impressive talk. All like a velvet curtain cover. I understand that not everyone believes me. In the eyes of the young faces from Silicon Valley, I saw only ridicule. They think I'm a senile old man, stuck in the past. Not seeing the bright light of the internet, not hearing the echoes of a new era. Even in the hallway conversations that followed, I caught whispers that cut like knife points. He missed the boat in technology. He was too conservative. Be friends with Bill Gates and learn nothing about the internet. I'm used to that kind of curtain. It's like a copy of what I heard years ago when I was younger and also made off-the-cuff predictions. The atmosphere after the speech was strange. Outside, the party continued with wine, music, and laughter. But in the darkness, in small groups of people chatting, there were faint laughs and shrugs. Some people in finance are different. They nodded, whispering to each other, "He's right." But it's hard to hear at this time. They are holding pension funds, huge savings of people. They know that in the intoxication of the market not everyone can stay sober. My close friend Bill Gates, sitting in the audience at that time, whispered to someone. This talk is a lecture on the market, so concise that nothing more is needed. But out there, the proud young people don't care. They see themselves as pioneers, and I'm just a symbol of an old era. The irony is that I don't hate technology. I just don't invest in things I don't understand. The internet can change the world. But internet stocks won't necessarily turn into gold. I've lived long enough to know that every time humanity falls in love with a great invention, millions of investors are disillusioned. This truth repeats itself like a refrain, but it seems every generation needs to experience it for themselves to believe it. As I sat back in my apartment overlooking the golf course, remembering the eyes of the young people, I didn't feel sad. I planted the seed. It's their choice to believe it or not. The market doesn't need my advice to just crash when the time comes. A few months later, the internet bubble began to burst. The companies that were praised disappeared as if they never existed. The mocking laughter in Sun Valley suddenly stopped. But the real value of that moment wasn't whether I was right or wrong. It lies in the contrast between me and the crowd. I chose the opposite path. The path of patience and caution. It is not instinct but the result of a lifetime of training to gain the composure to stand before that storm. I started very early. From his days as a boy in Omaha, immersed in numbers and coins. I think back to my childhood, where the snowball of my life started rolling. I have been obsessed with money since I was a kid. Not because I am greedy but because I see in every coin something magical for others. A penny to spend with me. It is a seed. If you keep it long enough, if you put it in the right place, it will flourish. From the early days of selling Coca-Cola gum, delivering morning newspapers, I learned a simple truth: money doesn't come. It must be hunted with patience and skill. I was happy to sit and count each little profit, as if watching my first snowball grow. I was not like other kids while they were passionate about games or football. I was more interested in reading stock charts, playing horse racing simulators, and flipping through financial books than dreaming of becoming a firefighter or a doctor. I dream of becoming the richest man in the world, and it's not just a pipe dream but a promise to myself. But to understand why a boy like me was so driven so early, one must look at the family background. I grew up in a home where my father was a model of integrity and faith. My mother, on the other hand, had unpredictable tantrums. I learned discipline from my father and from my mother. The scars of fear. It all blended into me. A man who always finds refuge in numbers. Instead of being in human arms when I remember Sun Valley, I see an invisible connection between me that day and the boy from back then. The boy counting shuha became the old man predicting bubbles in Idaho. Even though the scenery changes, the essence remains the same: don't follow the crowd, believe in the logic of numbers and patiently wait for time to prove it. My snowball was rolling early on and Sun Valley was just a turn off. Where I tell the world what I've known since childhood. Everything may be fleeting, but only what is truly valuable lasts forever. I still vividly remember those damp Omaha mornings when the newspaper delivery man's knocking echoed through the neighborhood instead of lying in bed like other kids. I got up early, carrying a bag heavy with newspaper print. Lou walked up each step, throwing each note right into the door. From a young age, I was obsessed with money and calculating games. For me, every penny earned is a reward. Not just for the material value but for the feeling of being able to control a small piece of the world. I didn't play fireman or cowboy like my classmates. My games were notebooks, spreadsheets, and endless addition and subtraction problems. I sell Coke gum and deliver newspapers. Place battery machine in barber shop and calculate daily revenue. I got so hooked that one day I discovered I could buy 6 cans of Coke cheap and sell them individually for a profit. My heart was pounding as if I had just found out a big secret for me. Every little profit is like a snowflake rolling onto the ball. My family is not exactly happy. My father Hal was an upright man who worked as a stockbroker and then entered politics. He was a gentle and kind man who supported me during my childhood. I admire him as a man of deep religious faith and rare honesty. On the contrary, my mother was plagued with sudden bouts of anger. I used to tremble when I heard her voice, and used to hide in the corner of the house to avoid her cold criticism. From my father I learned integrity, from my mother I learned fear. Those two contrasting currents blended together, creating a shy boy. Find solace in numbers instead of people. I am not an easy child to be around. My friends look at me like a freak. While they were playing ball in the yard, I sat in my room, turning the pages of financial newspapers. I have a naive but steadfast faith. If I save enough and invest correctly, I can become the richest man in the world. Others may see it as wishful thinking. But for me that is a clear goal. A compass to guide the way. I soon realized that making money doesn't always require strength, but rather keen observation. One day I bought an old battery-operated machine that was in a barber shop. After just a few weeks, the profit was enough to buy another machine. I don't care about playing games, but I find it fascinating watching the coins clatter down the slot. Each sound is a demonstration of the operation of a law. Money grows when you put it in the right place. But not all memories are sweet. I remember those evenings when family dinners were suffocatingly silent. My mother would often make everyone tense with her harsh comments. My father patiently endured, quietly keeping the peace. I would sit there staring down at my plate, my mind just wanting to escape into my own world of numbers, coins, and stock quotes I cut out of newspapers. Gradually I learned to look at life as a balance sheet, joys, sorrows. Safety and fear both have their value. If I collect enough positive things, they will make up for the negative ones. And then I created my own yardstick, an internal scorecard, where I just need to know what I'm living by without needing the crowd's approval. That is what I later called a noricus, the inner measure. While many people run after the praise and criticism of others, I learned to ask myself, am I living by my principles? If the answer is yes, then no matter how harsh other people's criticism is, it cannot shake me when I look back. I see my childhood as one long test. I had to learn to endure loneliness, overcome fear and turn small coins into big lessons. I never forget the feeling of holding the hot newspaper. Running through the empty streets, thinking about how much money I'll get paid at the end of the month. It's not just labor but part of a long journey where the snowball starts rolling, small but persistent. Perhaps it was from those days that I understood that true value does not come from being appreciated by someone. It comes from the ability to work quietly, accumulate little by little, and hold on to your beliefs even when others see nothing. I started building my life that way. A child selling candy, delivering newspapers, recording every penny of profit, believing he could win the world when he remembers his childhood. I can't separate the memories with my parents. My father is one of the people who has had the biggest influence on me. He is a stockbroker. Then entered politics as a congressman. He had composure, deep religious faith and unshakable principles in life. I look up to my father as a beacon. He works quietly, without competition, but radiates a prestige that makes everyone around him respect him. My father often took me to the brokerage office, which was filled with the smell of printing paper. Ink and the click of mechanical calculators. I was drawn to the numbers jumping continuously on the board. Thick news about the market. In the dim light of that office, I felt I had found my own language. I learned from my father that integrity is more important than patience. A lesson that later became the backbone of my investment philosophy. But on the contrary, my mother was unpredictable. She is smart and beautiful but often lets her anger control her. I remember the evenings when she would suddenly hurl harsh criticisms, making the whole house tense. My sister Doris and I sat silently, looking at our plates, trying to avoid her eyes. In those moments, I felt fear like an electric current running through my body. I learned something else from my mother. Insecurity and the need to find refuge in one's own world. It is this contradiction that has shaped me. I am not like other kids. I have few friends and rarely play games. Instead, I found solace in numbers, in books, in stock quotes I cut out of newspapers. I read hours upon hours of crime stories, football statistics, anything that could be boiled down to data. I feel the human world is too complicated, but the digital world is honest and trustworthy. Shyness follows me like a shadow. I was afraid of standing in front of a crowd, afraid of being called on in class, afraid of being the center of attention when forced to give a presentation. My voice was shaking and my hands were sweaty. That feeling made me confine myself even more in the safe zone of books and math problems. I believe that if I can accumulate enough knowledge and enough money, I will create an invisible protective wall that will help me no longer have to endure emotional storms from the outside. I'm not good at socializing either. My classmates often find me strange. I have a habit of being so engrossed in reading that I forget to talk. I like to walk around Omaha alone, looking for cheap candy or soda stores to memorize the prices. For me, a cheaper coin is also an important discovery. While other boys dreamed of becoming a soccer player or a pilot, I dreamed of becoming rich with the strong belief that it was possible if I knew how to calculate. Yet deep down, I also longed to acknowledge the closure and fear that forced me to create another measure for life. I can't rely on other people's approval. Because I know I don't fit into conventional social norms. I need another transcript. Knowest inside gauge. Where only I know the answer. I ask myself, am I doing the right thing? Are you living by principles? If the answer is yes. So the praise and criticism of the world are just distant echoes. Those lessons not only helped me through my childhood but also became the foundation for my entire career. Because in investing, if you let the crowd decide for you, you will never be different. Only when you believe in your own measure, you dare to buy when others fear, dare to hold when others mock, dare to wait when others are in a hurry. I trained myself in silence like a warrior trains in the dark. The fears from his mother, the integrity from his father, and his own timidity blend into a strange personality type. Both hungry for success and wanting to stay out of the limelight. I feel safe hiding behind numbers and investments rather than in noisy social relationships. Looking back, I know it was the family conflicts that tempered me. If my childhood had been completely happy, I probably wouldn't have been so obsessed with money. If my mother were gentle, I probably wouldn't have built such a tight world for myself. Every scratch leaves a mark and I turn them into tools. Those years taught me that to survive, I had to stick to my own path. I don't need many friends, don't need compliments, just need to keep my inner self. I didn't know I would become an investor then, but I knew I was training myself to tolerate loneliness. A quality that later became my greatest advantage in the marketplace, and my snowball continued to roll from small businesses to plans in my head, every penny saved, every fear overcome, every book devoured, all adding up to the first weight, preparing for bigger steps. First day saw the book Security Alias by Benjamin Graham. It was like the moment a thirsty traveler found a well in the desert. The dry words full of equations and charts lit a new faith in me. Investing is not a gamble but a science. It has rules, principles, and logic that can be grasped. I read it voraciously and then continued to look for Mr. Intelligent Investor in every page. Graham showed me how to look at a company not by its outward appearance but by its true value. He called it value investing, buying stocks when they were cheaper than their true value and patiently waiting for the market to realize its mistake with me. It was a revelation. It fits perfectly with the inner gauge I've nurtured since childhood. I was determined to meet Graham when I applied to Columbia. I have only one goal, to sit in his class. I still remember clearly the first day I entered the lecture hall, where he stood and lectured with a calm demeanor, like an ancient sage. His voice was even and unadorned, but each word was like a needle carved into my mind. I was so attentive that I didn't miss a single dot in my notes. In the eyes of my friends, I am strange. I don't care about parties, football or dating. I only live for numbers, financial reports. I often hunkered down in the library until late at night, as if practicing some secret martial art. And then the moment I've been waiting for came. I got to work directly for Graham at Graham Newman, but the reality was never quite what it seemed. I walked into Graham Nann's office with excitement only to quickly hit the wall of reality there. I'm not the genius I thought I was. I am just a young employee. Doing small analytical work, colleagues are calm and cold. They looked at me like a fool with too much enthusiasm. I learned my first lesson when I came up with the idea of buying shares in an iron company. I firmly believe that the real value is higher than the market price. But as he presented, Graham simply tapped his fingers on the table and asked a simple question. Are you sure you're not just seeing what you want to see? I was silent. It was the first time I understood that analysis was not just about numbers but also about discipline against one's own illusions. At Graham Newman, I see strange investments. Buying small companies just because the stock price is cheaper than the cash they have on hand. Investing in abandoned but surprisingly safe bonds. These are not flashy shots, but are solid punches to the soft belly of the market. I began to see clearly that success requires a steely mentality and infinite patience. But I also see myself differently. He is extremely cautious, almost never putting a huge amount into one company. I am different. I have an instinct to focus, to put all my capital into a few rare opportunities that I believe in. This difference is gradually becoming apparent. I knew I couldn't live in his shadow forever, so one day I proposed a deal with great confidence. But when Graham disagreed, I felt like I had been punched in the chest. I left the conference room, my heart pounding, both sad and angry. That was a career strike. For the first time it became clear to me that I didn't quite belong here. I am grateful to Graham, but I also understand that my path cannot be simply a copy of his. I left Graham Newman with lessons no one else could teach me, that the market is a giant fool, constantly oscillating between greed and fear, that margin safety is not just a formula but a vital shield, and that there is no easy way. Just discipline and patience, and I also knew that to get my snowball rolling further, I needed to create my own track. Graham gave me the map, but the real path was mine to discover. I stepped out, carrying with me the philosophy of value investing, but also the determination to continue writing the story in my own way. When leaving Graham Newman, I returned to Omaha with a simmering determination. I knew I had learned immutable principles from Graham, but I also knew I needed space to experiment on my own. I don't want to spread my capital across dozens of small investments. I want to focus. I believe that if I find some real opportunities, I can bet big and win big. So I started a small investment fund. POSIP. The office was nothing fancy, just a modest room in a building in downtown Omaha. I raised capital from family, friends, people who believed in me. At first the amount was very small, but I felt as excited as if I held the whole world in my hands. I set very strict operating principles. The investor is not asked why I buy or sell. They only know the final result. I charge in a special way. If the profit exceeds the standard, I will receive the share. I want people to understand that I only make money when they make money too. This is the rope of responsibility that I voluntarily tie around my neck. The first deals were a testament to how I saw the market. I hunt for small, overlooked companies. The stock is unreasonably undervalued. I once bought stock in a failing textile company, but the value of their cash in hand was more than the market price. I know I'm taking a risk, but I also know I'm buying $1 for 50 cents. To outsiders I may seem reckless, but I don't think so. I treat every investment like a bet on the racetrack. There. Most players just look at the flashy horse, but I look at the track, the rider, and the numbers hidden in the statistics. I don't care about betting on every race. I just pick a few sure rounds and bet all my capital. When the results came in, people were surprised year after year. My fund grew far faster than the market, the compounded returns quickly made a splash. I do not show off, do not boast. I just continue to sit in my small office, reading financial reports, gnawing at each deal like a squirrel patiently picking up nuts. I remember one time when I bought shares of SBM Map, a company that specializes in drawing maps for the insurance industry. The core business was exhausted, but the company owned a huge stock portfolio. The market did not pay attention. But seeing me buy into the change and the results that exceeded expectations is proof that the rewards always go to those who are willing to turn the pages of reports that others ignore. Gradually the capital increased, the reputation spread, but I did not change my living habits. I still eat hamburgers, drink Jericho, and wear old sweaters. I still play silly pranks that make my friends think I've never grown up behind that simple exterior. I know I'm building a solid foundation for the future. I understand that the path I have chosen is not easy. It requires solitude. Because the crowd doesn't always go my way. There are times when the whole market is excited, and I sit still with cash. There are times when the market panics. I buy again. This difference often makes me the target of ridicule, but it is also what creates my biggest advantage. Looking back at the early days of Buffett partnership, I felt like I was standing on a giant racetrack, with players rushing in, screaming, and betting recklessly. I stood in a corner watching, waiting, and only placing bets when sure. While many people went broke after a few rounds, my snowball kept rolling bigger and bigger. That snowball started with candy coins, with lessons at Graham, in a small office in Omaha, and now it has real weight. I know the road ahead is long and challenging, but I also know I have found a way to survive and prevail, with patience, discipline, and trust in my inner gauge. I left my childhood, left my position as a student to become an independent player on the harsh racetrack. And from here, the snowball story enters a new phase, where it begins to roll thicker layers of snow, roll further, and is no longer easy to stop. Looking back on my life, I realized there was a period where Suji stepped in and became my spiritual center in the dry world of numbers, financial reports, and stocks. Her presence was like a gentle melody in the data-filled symphony. I am not an easy person to approach. My shyness from childhood made me avoid social connections like other Sujis at times. She brought a soft openness that made my Omaha home no longer a fortress of silence. She likes to sing while I bury my head in the stock charts. She sat at the piano and played old melodies. Her music and my financial world make for an interesting contrast. Idani heavy every decision with interest and margin of safety. She believes that life must have room for joy and freedom. It is that difference that keeps our family balanced. In the 1960s, I began to accumulate success. But Suji was the soul of the house and organized meetings with friends, expanding the social circle, so that the house in Omaha became a place to welcome not only businessmen but also artists. Political journalist. I often sit quietly in the corner listening to them talk. Rarely participate, but I know thanks to Suji, I am not completely isolated from the outside world. Our marriage is unconventional. The Buffett family has a distinct atmosphere, sometimes confusing to outsiders. Sway and I share a lasting bond, but we each go our separate ways. I am not the romantic type, not good at saying sweet words, but I believe you understand that my love is expressed through absolute trust. I let her do what she wanted and she let me live in my own private world. Suji is not only a wife, she is also a bridge between me and my children. I was not good at parenting and often avoided small conflicts in the family. It was she who explained, reconciled, and kept the peace during the busy years. If I am the dry skeleton of the family, then she is the skin and heartbeat that keeps it alive. I realized more and more that the presence of a teacher is important not only for the family but also for the career journey. When I get caught up in the numbers, she reminds me that behind the stocks are people, stories, lives impacted by every business decision. I never told anyone this, but it was she who kept me from turning into a profit-making machine. In the world I build with discipline and strict principles. Suji is the exception. I don't impose any rules on her. I respect your freedom. Even if that means accepting differences that society often finds difficult to accept. Outsiders may gossip, but I believe every family has its own way of surviving and ours is based on trust. Not a stereotype. I miss summer nights. After the children were asleep, she sang softly in the living room, while I sat at my desk with a pile of papers. Her singing voice mixed with the rustling of paper created an atmosphere that I can still clearly feel. It was a family picture. One lives in the world of music, one in the world of numbers. But both share the same space, rolling the snowball of life together. As Bia began to emerge as a name in the financial world, I found myself withdrawing more and more from social life, avoiding all the limelight. But Suji is the opposite. She opened her arms to participate in charitable community activities. Connect with people I never would have met if I had just kept to myself. The 1960s did not mark a parallel period. I entered a period of acceleration in the business world, and she became a spiritual support, both a companion and a refuge. It's ironic that while the world looks at me as a cold investor, my family depends on Suji to feel human. If my snow globe is made up of coins and investment decisions, then you are the soft layer of snow that makes it not only big but also sustainable. The role of my aunt in my life cannot be measured in numbers. But without her, the snowball would have rolled dry and fragile. I will never forget the first days I walked into Berkshire Hall. It was just a dying textile company. An old machine in New England. I bought it not because I love textiles but because of the cheapness of the stock. Market price is much lower than book value. I believe that when I take control there will be a way to profit from what others have neglected. But that very deal later turned out to be a turning point beyond all expectations. The textile industry never revived. I put in the effort and patience. But old factories, outdated technology, fierce competition with foreign countries. All of which forced me to accept the fact that this was a losing battle right from the start. But instead of letting it die, I turned Bear into a cover for other investments from a textile company. It gradually became the giant container for an entire empire. I started with the deals that caught the attention of Wall Street when American Pest was rocked by the salad oil scandal. Stocks fell freely, crowds fled. I buy again. I believe in the power of brands and in customer trust. Not just short-term numbers. The American Express deal is proof that if you look at your core values, you can make money when the world is panicking. And then Disney. One Studios was struggling at the time, but I saw in it an intangible asset that no one could replace. Imagination and brand, I invest. And when Mary Poppins exploded in success, the value of the investment skyrocketed. People began to whisper that perhaps Buffett was not only a bargain hunter but also saw what the market was blind to, most importantly his relationship with Graham and the Washington Post. I bought shares in the newspaper not just for financial reasons but because I believe in the paper. She was a strong, intelligent woman who took charge of the newspaper in a very risky situation. Investing in the Washington Post means I believe in people more than balance sheets. My friendship with Kay later became one of the most important relationships in my life. Both personally and spiritually, I began to be called the king of the street. But the irony is that I never left Omaha. I refused to move the office to New York, refused to attend lavish parties. I like eating hamburgers at small restaurants, drinking Coke and driving my old car around town. While my fame spread, I kept my lifestyle simple as if success did not change me. Inside BR, I built a special structure for the subsidiaries to manage themselves without imposing bureaucracy. I believe the local operators know their job better than I do sitting in Omaha. I just have to pick the right people, put my trust in them and let them do the work. That's how I turned Berkshire into a collection of brilliant businesses, not a bureaucratic machine. During those years, I began to accumulate a reputation not only for profit but for my unusual style. I don't make quarterly forecasts. Not talking about short-term profits, I just repeat the principle of buy when cheap, hold long-term and believe in value. The crowd initially laughed, but then gradually realized that perhaps I was creating something more sustainable than they thought. The outside world sees me as a phenomenon, but I know I'm just doing the only thing that feels right to me. When Go Street goes for speed, I choose slowness when others look at computer screens. I read the report printed on paper. When the crowd believed success lay in New York, I remained steadfast in my small office in Omaha. When I entered the 1970s, BR was no longer a textile company. It has become the vehicle for me to accumulate and nurture an investment empire. Each deal with Express, Disney, and to Post were the bricks that laid the foundation for my future image. From a provincial boy, I began to transform into someone that the financial world calls by a respectful nickname. Though I never considered myself one of them, and my snowball once again rolled up a thicker layer, bigger, heavier and strong enough to not be easily stopped. The 1970s did not open with a series of harsh challenges. The world fell into inflation, the oil shock caused prices to skyrocket. The stock market plunged as many investors despaired. I see opportunity for me again. Chaos is not the enemy, it is fertile ground. Because it is when fear spreads that the real value of a business is forgotten by the market. I'm still sitting in Omaha, far away from Go Street. Following the seemingly apocalyptic events, the press was filled with bad news, unemployment, and fuel shortages. The Dow Jones Index fell. Many investment funds collapsed. Small investors sell off to keep their last bit of capital. But I am different. I believe the U.S. economy has long-term resilience, and my job is to be patient and wait for opportunities to buy valuable businesses at a discount. I bought the Washington Post during a period when people were skeptical that print newspapers would be overwhelmed. I invested in GEICO when this insurance company was in crisis. Because I understand their operating model well. From a live chat years ago. I kept Coca-Cola in my sights, waiting for the right moment. Each deal was like a chess piece placed on a large chessboard, potentially overlooked by the crowd. But I know the power will reveal itself over time. It was this persistence that led people to call me the Omaha Prophet. They consider my ability to predict the bubble, survive and triumph through the crisis as mystical. But I never saw myself as a fortune teller. I don't see the future. I just read the present with different eyes than the crowd. I believe in numbers, in human nature and in the repetition of history. During the annual meetings of Br. I make no vague promises. I said bluntly, I don't know what the market is going to be like next year, but I know we'll do well if we buy the right businesses. The auditorium was packed. People came from all over to hear me speak. I was surprised to see people flying halfway around the world just to attend. Consider this the Woodstock of capitalism. I still drink Coca-Cola and eat popcorn. Joke when answering questions, but I know that outward simplicity cannot conceal the weight that people attach to my every word. In the 1980s, as the U.S. economy recovered, Berkshire acquired the giant tent and Broska Furniture Mars, a family-owned furniture store. Just because of the integrity of Mrs. Rose Blomkin, founder of Tomoe Candies, a candy company whose brand is attached to the consumer's memory. I realized that value lies not only in tangible assets but also in brand, trust and customer sentiment. This is a new step in thinking from buying cheap assets to buying great assets at a fair price. When the U.S. stock market boomed in the 1980s, I was even more celebrated. But I am not drunk with praise. I still live in the same house in Omaha, drive a modest car, and eat lunch at cheap eateries. Many people don't understand why I have billions of dollars and live like that, but for me, it's natural. Money doesn't change me. It just exaggerates the inherent nature. Fame brings new things. The press came to interview. Students write essays about me, financial people look up to me as a role model. People started saying that I had a touch of gold. But I know well that all success can disappear if I forget discipline. And I always remind myself, keep your distance from the crowd, keep your inner ruler. When some people ask me for the secret, I just say be patient. Wait for the opportunity to become clear. Then act decisively. There is no other miracle. What they call solitude is really just the ability to endure loneliness while the rest of the world runs after noise. Those years made my reputation. But I still consider it part of the snowball rolling process. It's not the end, but just proof that simple principles can stand up in the midst of crisis. I don't need a forecast. I just have to trust that the value will speak eventually. And so from a small office in Omaha, I became a name that the world press kept mentioning. But in my heart I'm still just the boy I was. Sit and count each coin, believing that each small grain can contribute to the growth of a great snowball. I have been through many dramatic deals, but there are some experiences that are deeply imprinted in my memory. Because they not only challenge computational ability but also touch on the ultimate question of ethics and responsibility. One of the biggest was with Salomon Ross. When I bought shares, Salomon was a giant financial institution that was considered a bastion of the street. But then a scandal broke out. A company employee cheated in bidding for U.S. government bonds. Just one wrongdoing can put the entire organization on the brink of collapse. The Treasury could ban Salo from the bond market, which would be a death sentence. They called me in to resolve the crisis. I am not an investment banker, but I understand that trust is the most important asset. I stood before the National Assembly Committee, bowed my head and admitted my mistakes on behalf of those who had done wrong and promised that the company would make amends. It was a rare moment. I had to move from the role of silent investor to become a publicly accountable person. Solomon escaped death. But I never forgot the lesson that one moral mistake can destroy everything faster than any price crash. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battle line, Coca-Cola entered my life. This is not just an investment but a reflection of myself. I have loved this soft drink since I was a child. And when I looked at their global brand strength, I knew I found a gem. I bought a large stake and it turned out to be one of the most successful deals. Coca-Cola proves that a brand can be a stronger asset than any factory or production line. Then came Capital Cities, the ABIC acquisition. It's a risky media game. But I see the intelligence and integrity of Tom Murphy, who leads Capital Cities. I believe in him like I believed in Kay Graham at the Washington Post when Cap City merged with ABB for huge profits. But for me, the joy is not just in the profits, but in seeing a great leadership team turn a vision into reality. I was starting to become the Gold Street icon, the press put me on the front page. Investors consider me invincible. But behind that lies a big question. Will success make me forget my responsibilities? Every major deal involves tens of thousands of workers whose families place their trust in their work. I understand that my money can buy shares, but honor must be kept by action. I often tell my associates to remember that we can get rich without being messy. If you have to choose between losing money and losing your reputation, be willing to lose money. Money can come back but honor can't. This is not a slogan but a principle I have lived by since the day I entered the business world. At Salomon I learned that when trust is broken, you need to take responsibility even if it is not directly your fault. At Coca-Cola, I found that personal love for a product can go hand in hand with a wise investment decision, as long as it's based on real value. Capital C's. I witnessed the power of faith in people. The asset that no balance sheet can measure. At the top, I was both admired and doubted. Some people consider me a saint. Some people think I'm lucky or hiding a trick. But I don't care about the gossip. My measure is not in the press, but in whether I can look in the mirror and ask myself if I am living up to my principles. When Coca-Cola grew rapidly, when Capitustus became a media empire, when Salomos overcame the crisis. I understand that the combination of intelligence, discipline, and ethics can create extraordinary strength. It's not just a story about getting rich but a story about the responsibility of a person holding the weight of my money and snow globe in his hands. Roll up another thick layer again. It contains not only money but also honor, responsibility and harsh lessons on how to maintain integrity at the highest level. While my financial empire grew, inside my home in Omaha, a quiet change was taking place. Suji leaves home. It was not a noisy separation, not one of table-banging arguments, but a quiet departure accepted as if it had been arranged long ago. She moved to San Francisco, where music and freedom opened up another space for her. I understand why. I am a man of numbers. Often sitting for hours with reports and price lists, Suji craves connection, intimacy, social relationships and art. I can't give you that. I am not good at expressing my feelings, I don't know what to say. So we choose an unusual way, to continue loving. But live in two worlds. My family entered a strange state of balance. Suji still calls, still attends important occasions, still keeps the connection between the children and me. She didn't disappear, but she wasn't there every night when I came home. I accept because I believe that love does not necessarily have to be under the same roof. In the void left by my aunt, another person entered my life. A gentle, patient woman, willing to listen to my silence, willing to be there during the long evenings when I just buried my head in papers, little by little filling the void of loneliness. It's a strange arrangement but it works and I don't seek to explain it. Many outsiders look in, gossip, even judge. But I never cared what other people thought about my personal life. I believe in my inner gauge and in this case, that gauge says I did not betray my master. She knew and she agreed. Instead of being jealous or resentful, she chose to open her arms to give me the care I needed. It is love in a way few understand. But honestly, those years I experienced a paradox. While his career was at its peak, his personal life became fragile. I am called the street boss. Investments in Coca-Cola, Capital City, or Salomon brought with them a reputation for illustriousness. But when I returned home, the large room was empty of monks, only the rustling of financial reports and the light of the desk lamp remained. I realized that success never fully compensates for the lack of people. Money can fill a room but not a voice. A laugh, a hand on the shoulder. Astrid brings warmth, but that's another piece of the puzzle. Not like Susie. I live in parallel. On one side is the financial world filled with applause, on the other side is a void in the soul that no one but Suji can fill. But it is this complexity that makes me understand more clearly the value of balance. If there was only work, I would turn into a machine. If it were just my family, I probably wouldn't have become the person I have become in Astrid. In two different ways. Keep me from falling into extremes. Someone who helps me expand my world. Someone who keeps me from being swallowed by loneliness. When Suji sang at gatherings in San Francisco, I knew she remembered me when Astrid put a simple dinner on the table. I know I'm not completely immune. These relationships are not the norm, but they are the reality of my life. And I learned to accept that love doesn't always go in a straight line, but sometimes it curves and branches but still remains sincere. While my work was at its peak, my personal life was like a just song, loose, spontaneous, unpredictable but still rhythmic. I never tried to explain it to anyone. I just live in it. And grateful for both of those women helping me maintain balance. Entering the late 20th century, I saw the U.S. stock market turn into a giant casino, the indexes soared, stock prices climbed day by day, young faces. Fresh out of college, they confidently declare that they have discovered the new secret to wealth. A fever has swept across G Street. And this time it's wearing a tech coat. I sat in Omaha watching the numbers roll across the board, remembering Sun Valley in 1999, where I warned. I said then that the market cannot grow faster than the economy forever, that the gravity of interest rates will eventually pull everything down. But my warning fell into a sea of ridicule. People told me I was behind the times, that I didn't understand the internet, that I had missed the golden train. While everyone else was rushing, I stuck to my strategy, buying only businesses I understood, with sustainable advantages and at reasonable prices. This makes me feel like an outsider. But I don't mind. I remember the inner measuring stick I picked up as a child. Don't live by praise or criticism, live by principles. I still buy Coca-Cola, the Lead Express, companies with solid brands, with the strength to overcome fluctuations. I invest in insurance companies, in pieces that I know how to make money. I stay away from internet companies not because I hate technology but because I can't understand it deeply enough to bet on it. During the Berkshire shareholder meetings, I looked down at the auditorium filled with tens of thousands of people. They came to hear me say, many people expect me to explain about the new era. I just smiled, repeating the simple thing. If you don't understand, don't invest. If you can't keep it for 10 years, don't keep it for 10 minutes. Some people are disappointed, some people are frustrated. But I know I'm just telling the truth. Then the bubble burst. Once hyped internet companies evaporate in value in just a few months. Many investors lost everything, many large funds collapsed. I, who was once ridiculed, suddenly became a living testament to patience. They call me the one who stood outside the madness and won. But I don't see myself winning. I just don't lose. And sometimes in investing, not losing is winning. During those boom years, I still kept my familiar lifestyle. I eat Humber at Dairy Queen, drink Cherico, read the paper every morning. I do not buy luxury villas, do not chase luxury cars. My simplicity became part of my image, making it hard for many people to believe that one of the richest people in the world lived like a normal neighbor. But it's not an act, it's me. I have never needed more. I got more and more attention from the public, press, television, students, scholars. Everyone wanted to analyze the secret of the Luke buffet, looking for every word I said and every letter I wrote to shareholders. It's as if there's a secret formula inside, but I know the secret is just discipline and patience. And beliefs and values are not mystical. I also started to appear more publicly. Not because I want fame but because I know it is my responsibility to share. I talk about business ethics, about honesty, about not letting greed blind you. I know in a world where money can open the mind. These words need to be repeated even though many people do not want to hear them. At the end of the century, when the U.S. stock market was going through severe fluctuations, I was still sitting in Omaha reading reports, waiting for an opportunity. My snowball was big enough to roll on its own without my prompting, but I never forgot how that little boy felt. Hold each coin believing that every little grain is important. The late 20th century proved that amidst the booms and busts, what kept me going was not superior intelligence but the ability to wait. I'm not racing anyone. I just patiently let the snowball roll in the right direction, not getting caught up in the illusionary slope that will eventually collapse. Entering the early 21st century, I was no longer a name in the investment world but a global icon. But fame doesn't make the challenges go away. As the tech bubble bursts, the world financial markets are facing a new earthquake. 2008 crisis. I have seen many cycles but never seen panic spread so quickly. Banks fell like dominoes, brothers disappeared overnight. Other giants are shaking, people lose confidence, the market is in free fall. In that context, I was forced to make decisions that affected not only the individual but the entire system. I chose to walk in as everyone ran out. I invest in Goldman Sachs. Receive special dividends and stock options. I invested in General Electric to help them through their cash crunch. I invest in companies that are suffocated by fear. Because I believe that when the storm passes, those businesses will survive and continue to make a profit. It wasn't a heroic act, it was simply me doing what I always said I would. Be greedy when others are fearful. But in the midst of the financial storm, I also understood more clearly than ever that money is just a shell. I started repeating the concept of claim checks over and over again. Money is like a deposit slip. Represents the real value that society creates. You can own a bunch of those tickets. But if society no longer trusts them, they are just meaningless pieces of paper. I wrote in my letter to shareholders. In the end you can't eat money, you can only eat real food, live in real houses, use real services. Money is just the way we share those values. To me, this is not a new philosophy but an emphasis after witnessing a world nearly swept away by the illusion that money can generate money without a foundation. I also look back at myself. The snowball I rolled from these tiny coins has become a giant mass that no longer belongs to me alone. It is the property of millions of shareholders, of society, of the beneficiaries of the charitable funds to which I pledge. Bill Gates and I launched the pledge together, calling on other billionaires to give the majority of their wealth to charity. I know I can't take money to the grave, but I can put it to good use in the future. Meanwhile, my life is as simple as before. I eat at Dairy Queen, drink Jericho, go to work every day in the same room. This simplicity is no longer a private matter but has become an image that makes people believe that wealth does not necessarily mean luxury. I feel comfortable in myself that I never need to change. I don't consider myself a philosopher. But I know life has given me a lesson that I want to share. Small accumulations of patience and discipline become huge power. That's the nature of snowballs. And that lesson applies not only to money, but also to relationships, to trust, to honor. When the crisis subsided, people asked me for my secret to staying strong. I simply replied, don't lose your cool. The market may crash, the company may go bankrupt, but if you keep your principles, you won't lose everything. When I look back, I see clearly that my snowball has gone further than anyone expected. It started with candy coins, with the morning paper, with small deals. It grew through Mean Express, Ton Post, Coca-Cola, Salem, and then into a giant enough to impact the entire global financial system. But to me, it's still just the snowball I rolled from my youth, still following the same rules. Be patient, it will grow. In the end, Snowball is not just a story of money, but a story of life. About how a shy boy in Omaha could become one of the richest men in the world while still maintaining simplicity. About how love, family, principles, and faith together pushed that snowball far away. And when it became too big to belong to me alone, I can only smile and watch it continue rolling as a part of the world that I only helped to start. When closing the snowball journey, we not only go through the biography of a person but also are guided through the way he sees the world, patient to the point of stubbornness, disciplined to the point of stoicism. And above all, loyal to an inner measure that no flashy light from the outside can cover. Warren Buffett did not build a legend by luck. He built it from small coins, seemingly trivial numbers, and then let time turn them into irresistible power. That snowball is finally no longer just a financial story but becomes a metaphor for life. Any value, if nurtured persistently, can accumulate and transform into a legacy. At this final point, I would like to send my sincere thanks to you, who patiently listened to the whole journey. It was your listening that turned the story not only into my own but into a silent dialogue between the author, character, and reader. I hope that after listening, you will take a few minutes to reflect and share your assessment of this book. Not to seek praise but to add a new measure. The measure comes from the reader's true feelings. Each comment will be like a small snowflake, contributing to making the common ball of knowledge bigger and bigger. And finally, I invite you to suggest books that you long to explore in the future. It is that suggestion that will open up new paths, where we continue to accompany, delve deeper and challenge the limits of our understanding. Thank you for going through this journey. Thank you for listening. And now BX says goodbye and